Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back several centuries to a time when morning routine meant not coffee and a scroll through your phone, but surviving until noon without freezing, starving, or accidentally angering someone in chainmail. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to darkness. Not the cozy kind that wraps you up in warmth, but the kind that feels alive, the kind that presses against your skin and whispers, "It's still night." A faint draft slides across your face, and when you shift under the blanket, you realize it's not a blanket at all. It's a scratchy woolen rug that smells faintly of sheep and smoke. There's no hum of the heater, no glow from a streetlight, no reassuring tick of a digital clock. Only the pop of cooling embers in the corner hearth and the slow, distant creak of timbers adjusting to the cold. Somewhere above, a drop of water falls from the roof and splats onto the packed dirt floor. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the 14th century. You sit up, your breath visible in the dim light. The single window is shuttered tight, but a thin gray ribbon of dawn slips through the cracks, revealing a room that's both humble and proud in its simplicity. Rough wooden beams, a straw-stuffed mattress that crunches when you move, a chest that doubles as a chair, and a clay pitcher of water that's frozen over on top. You rub your hands together and blow into them, realizing how spoiled your modern self is. Central heating? Not a thing. Even a decent blanket would have been expensive. Most people slept in their clothes, sometimes even with their livestock for warmth. And yes, that means your bedroom could very well come with a bonus cow. The air smells of ashes, wool, and the faint tang of yesterday's stew. It's not exactly unpleasant, more like a rustic candle labeled peasant's morning. You stretch, crack your back, and realize that this isn't a day off, it's everyday life. No alarm clock needed, the cold itself is motivation. You shuffle over to the tiny hearth and poke at what's left of last night's fire. A few glowing coals blink back at you, like sleepy eyes reluctant to wake. You blow gently, and the faintest spark flickers to life, just enough to give you light and a sense of accomplishment. You might not last long here, but hey, you can start a fire. Outside, the world is waking up too. A rooster crows somewhere in the fog. You hear the thump of boots on frozen mud, the muffled neigh of a horse, and the rhythmic sound of someone chopping wood. The village is stirring, and you can almost taste the morning in the air, smoke, cold iron, and the faint sweetness of hay. You pull on your boots, stiff leather things that feel like walking in buckets, and reach for your cloak. It's heavy, itchy, and smells like wet dog, but you're suddenly grateful for it. The door creaks open, and the first light of morning spills in, a thin, milky wash that turns everything silver. Outside, the world is both silent and alive. A layer of frost glitters across the thatched roofs, and the ground crunches underfoot. A few figures move in the distance, bent against the cold. There's no small talk, no cheerful greetings, just quiet endurance. You quickly understand that here, surviving the morning is an achievement in itself. A historical fact drifts through your mind. In many medieval homes, families shared a single bed, sometimes including servants or guests. Privacy wasn't really a thing. The idea of personal space was as mythical as dragons. And here's a lesser-known detail. Some households would smear animal fat along door frames or burn certain herbs to ward off the chill and supposedly evil spirits. It didn't always work, but it made the place smell faintly of hope and mutton. As the sun edges higher, you notice something unexpected. It's quiet, yes, but not dead. There's a rhythm to it, a steady heartbeat of life lived by necessity. You can feel the entire village breathing together, bound by the same cold, the same light, the same struggle. You breathe it in, wood smoke, damp wool, faint manure, and exhale a small cloud that vanishes instantly. You can't help but wonder how they did it. How they woke up every day to this relentless chill, to work that never really ended, to nights that never seemed long enough. Historians still wonder if people back then felt the cold more deeply than we do, or if they simply accepted it as part of living. Maybe resilience wasn't something they practiced. Maybe it was just the air they breathed. You stamp your feet, feeling blood return to your toes, and take another look at the pale sky. The world is waking, slowly, stubbornly. The day ahead promises work, hunger, and maybe, if you're lucky, a moment or two of warmth by the hearth before darkness returns. But for now you're here, in the stillness of a medieval morning, caught between the discomfort and the beauty of survival. And as the sun climbs over the edge of the world, turning the frost to mist, you realize, it's cold, yes. It's harsh. But somehow, it's breathtakingly alive. You step out into the pale light of morning, your stomach growling like some half-tamed medieval hound. The cold air is sharp enough to make your eyes water, and your breath clouds in front of you like a lazy ghost. Somewhere nearby, a bell tolls, slow, measured, deliberate. It doesn't mark the start of work, exactly. It marks life resuming its rhythm. Your mission now, breakfast. Or, more accurately, whatever the 14th century thinks breakfast is. The first thing you notice is that there's no inviting smell of coffee drifting through the air. No hiss of bacon in a pan, no comforting hum of a toaster. Instead, you smell smoke, and cabbage, and maybe despair. You follow your nose toward a small, smoky hut that passes for the household kitchen. The roof sags, the door leans, and the whole thing looks like it's been through several harsh winters, which, to be fair, it probably has. Inside, it's dim and hazy. The hearth glows faintly, sending up tendrils of wood smoke that sting your eyes. A clay pot hangs over the embers, bubbling softly. You peer inside, hoping for stew. It's porridge. Cold porridge. You stir it with a wooden spoon. It's grayish, lumpy, and smells faintly of oats and regret. Someone's left a crust of bread on the table, hard enough to use as a self-defense weapon, and a small mug of ale that's been sitting overnight. Warm beer for breakfast. Delicious. You dip a finger into the porridge and take a taste. It's bland, gritty, and definitely not gluten-free. Still, it's calories, and in this world, that's what matters. The medieval body didn't care about macros or protein shakes. It cared about survival fuel. A rooster outside crows as if to mock you for eating this. You glance at the bread again. People back then baked loaves thick and dense, made from rye or barley. Wheat was often too expensive for common folk. And yes, it often came with bonus protein in the form of beetles or weevils. You pick one off your crust and flick it away with all the dignity you can muster. Congratulations, you've just had the peasant's continental breakfast. A small, wiry woman enters, her head covered with a faded linen kerchief. She doesn't speak at first, just moves with the brisk efficiency of someone who's done this every morning since forever. She gives the pot a stir, adds a pinch of salt, and motions for you to eat properly. You obey, spooning in another mouthful that tastes marginally less tragic now that it's warm. She grunts approvingly, then mutters something about the weather. You nod, pretending you understand her dialect. In truth, medieval English, or whatever local tongue you're supposed to be speaking, would sound almost alien to your modern ears. A mix of sharp consonants, strange vowels, and a rhythm that sounds halfway between poetry and a headache. The woman hands you a cup of ale. It's cloudy, sour, and about the temperature of sadness. But it's safer than water. That's a real historical fact. Back then, drinking straight from a stream or well could make you violently ill. Water wasn't filtered, and germs, though no one knew what they were everywhere. So yes, even children often drank low-alcohol ale with breakfast. You take a sip and cough. It's like carbonated vinegar that gave up on itself. Outside, the first rays of sunlight catch on the frost, turning the ground into a glittering sheet of silver. You hear the rhythmic sound of someone sharpening a blade, the steady crunch of boots in the mud, a child crying, a pig squealing, all blending into the symphony of daily life. You sit near the hearth, hands outstretched toward the fading coals, and realize that breakfast isn't a moment of leisure here. It's just a pause, a breath before the endless cycle of labor begins. And yet, there's something strangely grounding about it. The smoke curls upward, the fire crackles softly, and the faint rhythm of the morning hums around you. It's rough, yes, but it's real. A lesser-known fact: in some parts of medieval Europe, peasants ate onion soup or cheese curds in the morning instead of porridge. In colder regions, they might start the day with something called pottage, a sort of stew that could contain anything from beans to turnips to yesterday's leftovers, and sometimes, unsettlingly, bits of whatever small creature wandered too close to the pot. You imagine asking the woman if she has any sugar, or maybe an egg, and instantly realize how absurd that would sound. Sugar was a rare luxury. Eggs were valuable, often saved for trade. And your morning latte? That concept won't exist for another few hundred years. You stare at your bowl of porridge, at the fire, at the walls streaked with soot, and suddenly, you feel it. This quiet awe for people who live like this day after day. No shortcuts, no convenience, no comfort beyond what their own hands could create. Historians still wonder how peasants viewed food. Was it purely functional, or did they savor what little flavor they had? Did they feel joy over a good harvest meal the way we do over a fancy restaurant? Or had survival dulled those senses into quiet acceptance? You finish your breakfast, if that's what we're still calling it, and wipe your spoon on your sleeve. The woman nods once, as if to say, good enough. Then she takes your bowl, adds a splash of ale, and scrubs it clean with a piece of straw. No soap, no fuss. As you step outside again, full but not satisfied, the sun is just breaking through the mist. The village hums with life now. Hammers ring from the blacksmith's shop, a cart rattles down the path, chickens dart between your boots. And for a brief, quiet moment, you realize something. The porridge may have been terrible, but it was earned. Every grain of it grown, harvested, ground, and cooked by hand. No delivery app. No store shelf. Just effort, turned into sustenance. You take one last breath of smoky morning air and smile despite yourself. Because while you probably wouldn't last a week here, you can't help but respect the people who did. The world outside the cottage feels louder now, as if the entire village has taken one collective breath and started moving at once. You pull your cloak tighter, step onto the muddy path, and watch the day unfold around you. The air is sharp but alive, carrying the faint sounds of iron, laughter, and livestock. Smoke drifts lazily from thatched chimneys, mixing with the smell of earth and manure until the entire place smells like hard work and community, with just a hint of something burning that shouldn't be. The village isn't big, just a cluster of timber-framed houses, some barns, and a single church steeple watching over it all. But every inch of it hums with purpose. You pass a woman feeding chickens from a wooden bowl, a man hauling firewood, a barefoot boy chasing a goose who seems to be winning. This is medieval rush hour. You sidestep a puddle, and fail, then nod awkwardly at a passing farmer who gives you a polite grunt. Conversation isn't really a morning thing here. Everyone's too busy keeping themselves and their families alive. Still, there's an unspoken rhythm to the day. The blacksmith's hammer sets the beat, steady, metallic, and loud enough to echo across the fields. The church bell joins in occasionally, marking the passage of hours in the most dignified alarm system imaginable. And over it all, the crows squawk their own commentary from the rooftops. You make your way toward the heart of the village, a small square dominated by a well. Two women are already there, gossiping as they draw water, their laughter bubbling up like the sound of the stream below. One glances your way, eyes narrowing, clearly suspicious of your strange clothes and your general aura of confusion. The other whispers something that probably translates to city folk or time traveler. You smile and move along before anyone asks for your feudal ID. There's something oddly comforting about how alive this place feels. It's dirty, yes, and loud, and smells vaguely of goat, but it's also real. There's no pretending here, no curated image to maintain. What you see is what you get: work, survival, and the occasional laugh when a goose attacks a child. A historical fact drifts through your mind. Most medieval villages had populations of only a few hundred people. Everyone knew everyone else. Privacy was rare, gossip was currency, and your reputation could be as valuable as your land. A lesser-known detail? Some villages actually had official gossips, or community newsbearers, women who spread local happenings and rumors as a kind of informal information network. Before newspapers, before radio, there was just Martha with a bucket and a lot of opinions. As you wander, you start to notice the craftsmanship hidden in plain sight. The weaver's hut with its bundles of colored yarn drying on a line. The smell of freshly baked rye bread wafting from a baker's oven. The rhythmic creak of a wheelwright's lathe as he shapes a new cartwheel. You step closer to the blacksmith's forge. Sparks fly as iron meets hammer, bright orange flares bursting in the smoky air. The blacksmith is broad-shouldered, his face streaked with soot, his arms corded with muscle from years of swinging that hammer. He doesn't look up. He doesn't need to. The work is his language, and every clang of metal says, "I build what keeps this world turning." You watch as he dips a glowing horseshoe into water, steam rising in a hiss that smells faintly of minerals and heat. For a moment, you're mesmerized. There's something almost meditative about it. The rhythm, the focus, the complete lack of distraction. It makes you wonder, were they happier in their simplicity, or did they long for more, just like we do now? Historians still debate this, whether medieval peasants were crushed by hardship or quietly content within their tight-knit worlds. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Life was brutal, yes, but it was shared. You wander toward the edge of the square, where a group of children play a game that looks suspiciously like early soccer, except the ball appears to be made of stitched leather and possibly straw. One of them kicks it your way. It bounces off your boot, and everyone laughs. For a moment, you're part of it. The sun has climbed higher now, glinting off the rooftops. Villagers move with purpose. The women heading to the fields, the men checking their tools, the elders sitting near the well to watch it all unfold with the authority of someone who's seen this exact scene every day for decades. You pass by the tavern, a low, dark building that smells of ale and smoke. It's quiet now, but later it'll come alive with the laughter of farmers unwinding after the day's work. Inside, people will trade stories, sing songs, maybe even argue about whose turn it is to buy the next round of watery beer. For now, though, the tavern door is shut, and the only music is the rustle of the wind through the bare branches and the distant clang of the smithy. You stop for a moment, just to take it in, the way the light filters through the smoke, the way the cold air bites at your cheeks, the steady hum of human life against the silence of nature. There's no clock to watch, no notifications to check, no rush except the one imposed by the rising sun. You start to realize that time here moves differently, not faster or slower, just deeper. It's in the rhythm of the hammer, the murmur of the well, the laughter of children chasing a goose through mud. It's in the weight of the frost on the roof and the way your breath hangs in the air before vanishing. You lean against the fence, listening to it all, and for a brief second, you understand why they endured it. Not for glory, not for comfort, but for the quiet beauty that somehow hides inside the hardship. And as the church bell tolls again, echoing across the hills, you realize your day in the Middle Ages has truly begun. The rhythm of the village carries on like a song that's been playing for centuries. Hammer, laughter, wind, footsteps. But then, A new sound rises above it all, the low, rhythmic clop of hooves. At first it's faint. You barely notice it beneath the blacksmith's hammer and the chatter of the well. But it grows louder, heavier, like a heartbeat made of iron. The villagers begin to look up, one by one. A few stop what they're doing. Someone mutters, "The Lord's men." The tone in their voice isn't excitement. It's something closer to dread wrapped in politeness. You glance down the muddy road that cuts through the village, and soon enough you see them. 4 riders, cloaked and armored, moving in perfect formation. Their horses snort clouds of steam into the morning air. Each rider bears a small banner marked with the colors of the local lord, the man who technically owns everything around here, including, in a legal sense, most of the people. The villagers step aside. No one bows too deeply, but no one dares to ignore them either. You do what everyone else does. Keep your eyes down, your expression neutral, your thoughts quiet. The riders stop near the well. The leader dismounts. A tall man with a scar across his cheek and the self-assured posture of someone who's never had to earn respect, only enforce it. His boots hit the ground with a heavy, deliberate thud. "By order of Lord Warren," he says, his voice like gravel. "Taxes are due." A murmur ripples through the crowd. It's not outrage, just resignation. The same kind of sigh you'd give when the power goes out right before your favorite show. One by one, villagers shuffle forward to hand over their payments, coins, sacks of grain, sometimes even chickens. You watch as the officer inspects each offering, nods, and moves on. One poor farmer steps forward empty-handed, mumbling something about a bad harvest. The officer's expression doesn't change. He gestures to one of his men, who scribbles a note on a piece of parchment and ties it to the farmer's doorpost. You don't need to ask what it means. It's a mark of debt or warning. The villagers keep their faces blank, their hands busy. Resistance isn't bravery here, it's suicide. You remember reading that in many parts of medieval Europe, peasants owed not just taxes and money, but labor. A certain number of days each year were spent working the Lord's fields instead of their own. It wasn't optional, it was survival. And for every lord collecting taxes, there was a scribe making sure none of it went missing. A lesser-known fact, some lords, the clever or especially greedy ones, taxed by the number of windows or hearths in a home. More light meant more wealth, apparently. You can't help but think that luxury tax has always been humanity's favorite irony. The officer walks past you now, eyes scanning faces. His armor gleams where the sunlight catches it, polished so bright it reflects the whole village in warped miniature. You catch your own reflection for a moment, out of place, unsure, wearing borrowed wool and confusion. He doesn't stop, doesn't speak to you. Maybe he mistakes you for a traveling laborer. Maybe you're just lucky. The horses snort and paw at the ground. You notice how enormous they are, massive war horses, bred for power, not speed. They wear steel bits and thick leather reins, each stamped with the Lord's crest. The riders' cloaks ripple in the cold breeze, and the sight of them, orderly, armed, and indifferent, reminds you how fragile this village really is. Everything here runs on obedience, on the illusion that peace is maintained, when really it's just the absence of open defiance. The officer mounts his horse again, his cloak settling like a shadow behind him. "Let it be known," he calls out. "Lord Warren expects full payment by the next moon. Any who fail will answer for it." He turns his horse sharply, mud spraying from the hooves. The villagers bow their heads. No one speaks until the riders are gone, just the steady fading of hooves against the frozen road. Then the silence breaks, all at once. Someone curses softly. Someone else spits into the dirt. A few mutter about hiding what little they have before the collector's return. But within minutes life resumes. The hammer rings again. The children chase their ball. The world keeps spinning because it has to. you feel a strange weight settle in your chest. This isn't the kind of danger you can run from. It's the kind that seeps into every corner of life. The power of a few, resting on the backs of many. And yet, there's resilience here, too. You see it in the way a woman straightens her back and goes back to the well, in the quiet determination on the blacksmith's face as he lifts his hammer again. They can't change the system, but they can endure it. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants truly felt oppressed in the modern sense. Some suggest they saw the hierarchy as natural, ordained by God, a divine order that couldn't be questioned. Others argue that quiet acts of resistance were common: hidden grain, fake records, conveniently lost sheep. You look toward the horizon, where the riders have vanished into the pale morning light. A cloud of dust lingers in their wake, golden in the sun. Somewhere beyond those hills lies the Lord's manor, stone walls, roaring fires, food that isn't gray and lumpy. You imagine stepping into that world, just for a moment, to see what life looks like from the other side of the whip. The silk, the warmth, the safety, all built on the calloused hands of the people behind you. You wonder if the Lord ever rides through his lands simply to see them, or if, to him, the people here are just numbers on parchment, as replaceable as the ink they're written in. The blacksmith glances up from his forge, eyes meeting yours for a brief second. He gives a short nod, as if to say, "That's just the way of things." Then he returns to work, and the rhythm of life begins again. You turn to walk back through the square. The mud still carries the prints of hooves, filling slowly with water from the melting frost. The villagers step around them without a word. And as you pass the well once more, you realize that every morning here starts the same way, with the sound of hooves in the distance, real or imagined, reminding everyone who truly owns the day. The bell begins to ring again. Not the brisk, workday chime that marked the start of the morning, but a slower, deeper tone that rolls through the air like a heartbeat. It's coming from the church. You follow the sound across the village, your boots slipping in the half-melted mud. The closer you get, the more the air changes. The smell of smoke and livestock fades, replaced by the cool, dry scent of old stone and candle wax. The church sits on a slight rise at the edge of the village, watching over everything like a silent guardian, or perhaps a judge. Its walls are rough-hewn limestone, patched in places with timber and moss. The windows are narrow slits, not for decoration but for defense. The bell tower leans slightly, as though it's tired from centuries of keeping watch. You push open the wooden door, and a breath of chill air greets you. Inside, it's dim and quiet. Shafts of pale light filter through the high windows, catching dust in their glow. A few candles flicker near the altar, and their flames dance like small spirits in the gloom. The sound of the outside world fades completely. No hammer, no laughter, no wind, just the slow echo of your footsteps on the worn stone floor. A priest stands near the altar, his back to you. His robe is plain wool, frayed at the edges, and his voice murmurs softly as he recites a prayer in Latin. The words sound ancient, rhythmic, almost musical. You don't understand them, but you can feel the weight of them, the centuries of repetition, the certainty that faith gives even when reason can't. You sit on a wooden bench, rough and splintered from generations of use. Around you, a few villagers kneel in quiet devotion. Their faces are hard, their hands clasped tight. You realize that for them, this isn't just belief, it's survival. In a world with no hospitals, no insurance, no weather forecasts, faith is the only constant. If your crops fail, you pray. If your child gets sick, you pray harder. If the tax man takes your last loaf of bread, you pray for mercy. A historical fact comes to mind. Nearly every part of medieval life was governed by the church. From birth to death, every milestone, baptism, marriage, confession, burial, passed through its hands. Sundays weren't optional. Attendance was expected. Even time itself revolved around it, measured by bells and feast days instead of hours and minutes. The priest finishes his prayer and turns. His eyes are tired but kind, his beard streaked with gray. He gives you a nod, the universal medieval greeting of, "Ah, another sinner, welcome." He begins to speak, his voice low and even. You catch fragments of the sermon. Sin, patience, duty, the usual greatest hits. But then he pauses and says something about charity, how even the smallest kindness can echo beyond death. The villagers nod solemnly, their faces a mix of fear and hope. You can't help but notice how much of faith here is built on both. Salvation and damnation, mercy and punishment, it's a delicate balance. People believe not just because they're told to, but because they must. In a world this fragile, belief is the only thing stronger than fear. And yet, there's something beautiful about it. The candles, the hymns, the slow rhythm of breath and prayer, it's like the whole room is exhaling together. You start to understand why people came here even when the fields needed tending. It wasn't just religion, it was relief. A lesser-known detail, some churches in rural Europe were painted with bright murals, saints, demons, angels, and devils, so vivid they almost seemed to move in the flickering candlelight. For many villagers, those images were the closest thing they had to books. They learned their stories through pictures and sermons, not words on a page. You tilt your head back and notice faint remnants of color on the wall above the altar, traces of red and gold, flaking away like the memory of a dream. The priest begins to chant again, and the sound fills the space like smoke. You find yourself breathing in rhythm with it. There's something hypnotic about the cadence, steady, soothing, ancient. You close your eyes and imagine what it must have felt like to live your entire life believing the world was a test. That every cough, every storm, every stroke of fortune was part of a divine plan. Comforting, perhaps, or terrifying. Historians still wonder how deeply the average person's faith truly ran. Was it sincere devotion, or habit drilled in since childhood? Did they feel the presence of God, or simply fear his absence? You open your eyes again. The sermon is ending. A few villagers cross themselves and file quietly out the door, their boots tapping softly on the floor. The priest kneels to snuff out the candles one by one, and the room grows darker with each extinguished flame. You linger for a moment longer. The silence is thick, almost tangible. You can hear the faint drip of water somewhere behind the altar, the distant rustle of wine through the cracks in the wall. You rise and step outside. The daylight feels blinding after the dim calm of the church. The bell rings again, lighter this time, a release. The village stretches before you, alive and imperfect and utterly human. Somewhere, a baby cries. Somewhere else, laughter bursts out of a doorway. You realize that, for all its superstition and control, the church was also a heartbeat, keeping time, binding the people together in something larger than themselves. You walk back down the hill, the sound of the bells still echoing faintly behind you. The fields glow golden in the afternoon sun, and for a moment, the whole world feels like it's holding its breath. Faith or fear, you're not sure which drives this place. Maybe both. Maybe that's always been the way of things. Evening falls like a slow tide. The light bleeds out of the sky, first gold, then violet, and finally a blue so deep it feels almost heavy. You can hear the day folding itself away. The last clang of a hammer, the soft whinny of a horse, the sigh of the wind through the shutters. In the medieval world, night isn't just the absence of light. It's a presence, something alive, waiting beyond the walls. People fear it, respect it, and prepare for it like a guest who must always be treated carefully. You return to the cottage where the hearth glows faintly, the only light in a sea of shadows. The woman of the house stirs a pot over the coals, stew, thick and earthy, made from whatever the day provided. A few villagers gather near the table. Someone brings bread hard enough to hammer nails. Someone else brings ale, cloudy and warm. You sit among them, and for a time, everything feels timeless. No one speaks much. The room hums softly with the sounds of chewing, sipping, and the occasional burst of laughter. Outside, the world vanishes. No stars yet, just darkness pressing against the tiny windows. When the meal ends, the stories begin. A man with a weathered face starts first. His voice is low, carrying the rhythm of a lifetime spent outdoors. He tells of a wandering knight who made a deal with a forest spirit, half truth, half warning. Another adds his own tale, about a ghost seen near the river, white as moonlight, searching for her lost child. The youngest among them listen wide-eyed, clutching their cloaks tighter as the wind scratches at the door. In medieval times, this was how history survived, not written, but spoken. Myths and memories tangled together until no one could tell where one ended and the other began. A story could outlive its teller, pass like a torch from one night to the next. You notice the flicker of candlelight painting everyone's faces in gold and shadow. It softens the lines of age, turns the scars into symbols. The room feels smaller but safer, as if the light itself is a shield keeping the world's dangers at bay. Then comes a moment of quiet. Someone stirs the embers, and sparks leap up like fireflies. You think of how fragile this comfort is. One wrong breath of wind, and the warmth could vanish. Yet no one seems afraid. They've lived all their lives in this rhythm, dark and dawn, danger and rest, faith and hunger, hope and loss. Outside, wolves begin to howl somewhere beyond the fields. The sound slides through the air, long, low, mournful. You feel it deep in your chest. The villagers pause, every face still. Then someone mutters a short prayer, and the moment passes. They go on with their stories. A historical truth: before the 15th century, night was not a single block of sleep. People often rested in two halves, first sleep and second sleep. Between them came an hour or two of quiet wakefulness, used for prayer, thought, or even neighborly talk. Imagine that, waking in the middle of the night, not to dread it, but to live within it. The candles burn lower. The air thickens with the smell of smoke and tallow. You lean back, watching the way shadows sway on the ceiling beams. The sound of crackling fire becomes a kind of heartbeat. For a brief moment, it feels as though you've crossed centuries, slipping into their world completely. When at last the room quiets, people begin to drift toward their sleeping places. Some curl up near the hearth. Others climb ladders to lofts under the thatched roof. Privacy is rare, comfort rarer. You're given a thin wool blanket, and a place on a straw mattress that rustles with the soft hiss of dry grass. The last candle is snuffed out. Darkness folds around you like a cloak. The fire whispers its final breath, and only the sound of slow, even breathing fills the space. You lie there, awake, eyes adjusting to the faint glow from the dying embers. Every sound feels amplified now: the creak of wood, the scurry of a mouse, the sigh of someone dreaming nearby. Outside, the moon rises. Its pale light seeps through the cracks in the shutters, sketching thin silver lines across the floor. You think about how fragile this life is, balanced on the edge of survival and wonder. They feared the dark, yet they also lived within it, told stories by its glow, prayed beneath its silence, dreamed beneath its roof. And slowly, as your eyes grow heavy, you understand why they called it the small hours. Time shrinks, sound softens, and all that remains is the heartbeat of the night itself. The first drop wakes you. It's soft, barely a tap on your forehead, but in a medieval cottage, that's enough to remind you that roofs are optional and leaks are loyal. You shift a little, pulling the coarse wool blanket tighter around your shoulders, trying to find a patch of straw that isn't suspiciously damp. The rain outside has thickened into a rhythm, steady and soothing, tap, 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 like the heartbeat of the night itself. The air smells of wet wood and smoke. Somewhere, a log sighs in the hearth's dying glow, sending up a ghost of warmth. Beside you, someone snores, loudly enough that you briefly wonder if people in the Middle Ages measured friendship by how well they tolerated each other's sleep noises. You stare up into the dark, the ceiling beams black silhouettes against the flickering firelight. You think of how this place holds every sound like a secret. A cough in one corner, a creak in another, the whisper of wind sneaking through the thatch. And then you realize, this is what night really sounded like before electricity. No hum of refrigerators, no cars passing by, no faint buzz of neon or screens. Just the breathing of the house, the sky, and you. Sleep doesn't come easily here, but dreams do. Maybe it's the way exhaustion presses down after a day of work that would make modern gyms illegal. Or maybe it's the darkness itself, so complete that your mind begins to paint its own light. You start to drift. In your half-sleep, you imagine walking through the same village streets again, but this time they're empty. The mud is smooth as glass. The air is silver and slow. Every cottage you pass glows faintly, as though the people inside are made of candlelight. You walk and walk until you reach the old chapel at the edge of town. Its doors are open, and the inside hums with a low, endless chant. Historians still debate what medieval dreams meant. Were they messages from God? Signs of sin? Or simply the mind's rebellion against silence? Some even kept dream books, trying to decode what each symbol meant: water for fortune, fire for temptation, teeth for lies. Imagine living in a world where every dream was a warning label. You never look at your subconscious the same way again. Outside, the rain grows heavier. You can hear it bouncing off the thatch, slipping through cracks, trickling down beams. Someone stirs near the hearth, mutters a prayer, then falls back asleep. The dog in the corner shifts, snuffling softly. The whole cottage becomes one breathing creature, warm, alive, and fragile. There's a curious peace to it. For all its discomforts, the medieval night holds something you rarely find in the modern one: stillness. You can feel it resting over everything like a blanket. Time slows until even your thoughts seem to move through honey. You begin to imagine what morning will bring. The fire will need rekindling. The same porridge will wait. The same cold air will bite. But right now, in this half-lit moment between sleep and waking, you understand why people survived. Not because they were stronger, but because they learned to rest even when the world didn't make it easy. A lesser-known truth: medieval villagers often shared beds not just for warmth, but for safety. A body beside you meant company against fear, a shared breath against the cold. In an age before locks and lamplight, being alone at night was the most dangerous luxury of all. The sound of rain softens again. The room seems to breathe slower with you. You turn on your side, pressing your face into the rough fabric, and let your thoughts drift through the dim air. What would you miss most, you wonder, if you lived here? The light switch? The shower? Or maybe just the certainty that when you close your eyes, tomorrow will come without question. And what would you gain? Maybe the sound of real silence. The weight of honest exhaustion. The beauty of a sky not washed out by cities. As you think this, your mind slips again, out of the cottage, past the fields, up into the clouded dark. You see the world from above, a handful of dim, golden lights scattered across endless black countryside. Each one a fire, a hearth, a heartbeat. Each one someone trying, like you, to make it through the night. The rain stops. A single drop falls, delayed, landing right on your nose. You smile in the dark. Sleep finally takes you. And now, let's slow everything down. The rain fades. The fire sighs into silence. The air cools, heavy with peace. You feel your breath lengthen, your chest rise and fall in a rhythm older than memory. Outside, the clouds drift apart, revealing the faint shimmer of moonlight. It spills gently over the fields, touches the rooftops, glides across the sleeping village like a hand smoothing the wrinkles of time. You're still there, in that cottage of wood and straw, surrounded by the echoes of 1,000 forgotten nights. Every breath you take feels slower, softer, deeper. The weight of the blankets presses you toward the earth, grounding you in stillness. Imagine it now, the distant hush of the forest, the faint hum of insects, the whisper of wind through old rafters. Each sound melts into the next, becoming one long exhale. You are safe. You are warm. The day has gone. The world outside can wait. Your body knows what to do. It remembers how to rest, how to let go, how to follow the slow rhythm of night until thought itself dissolves into quiet. Breathe in, and feel the last traces of the modern world drift away. Breathe out, and let the medieval dark hold you, gentle and endless. You are the last candle still burning, the final whisper before dawn. And soon, even that light will fade into peace.